I will ask them.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think they just finished.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay. You can start.
Okay. So you probably see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So today I want to give you a super short overview about industrial conference on data mining I visited last week. So that would be shoot. I want to keep it super short because like I want to discuss with you a couple of things that could be useful for Santiment because I think a few of the papers they introduced in the conference are suitable for us to like to build something on top of it. And firstly, I want to just show what people are talking about on the conference and share a few observations that I've learned. So the program of the conference, that was 4-day conference, it has a lot of sessions in parallel. And the way it works, in the first day, like day 0, you have workshops. That's a free tool for anybody to join. And we had our blockchain data analytics on the first day. So that's what all blockchain stuff happened. All other days, that's a full papers. I mean, academical papers like PhDs or something like that. So people just share their knowledge, and it was like typical academic conference. So first, I want to capture what was happening on the blockchain data analytics session, and I will start with like my talk, which is for Santiment. So if keeping it super short, so the full code is available in SunSDK repo. So that's the full presentation, but I will keep it super short as here. So basically, I've talked people about decentralized and centralized exchanges, a few differences between them from the on-chain perspective. And then I assume that there are a lot of pumps on centralized exchanges. I mean, we consider on decentralized exchanges. And probably they could be observed from the on-chain perspective. So the metric we have for centralized exchanges is exchange balance, and that's the price of sentiment and exchange balance. So I also assume that before the pump, we can see some abnormal activity of the centralized exchange wallet. So that's might be the indicator of upcoming pump. So when we see like this, like I would say anomalies, like this pump, this, so that all this noise that could be like the signal of upcoming pump. So basically, my talk was based on how to gain money when you observe this on-chain behavior. So for detecting this abnormal activity from this noisy time series, I was using two methods. The first one is naive method, and the second one is prophet. So the prophet, that's series that we use, that Irina is using currently for anomaly detection. So the idea was quite simple. I detect anomalies with these methods, and I compare the results of backtest strategies created on top of the signals. So on the left, you can see the performance of Prophet model, and on the right, you can see the performance on the naive method. So the naive method is just we take time series for in-out difference for last 3 months, and if the current value is bigger than top 10% from this month, that's a signal. So as we see here, black line on the both pictures are benchmark. So that's just the hodling, and the blue line is different strategies based on the signals from two methods. The conclusion from this slide is just that the naive method works better than the Prophet model. So that's what we see from Santiment. So basically, you see that about 80% of strategies performs the same as benchmark or even worse. And for naive methods, only 40% of all strategies performs worse than just holding. So the naive method works in average better. And in the conclusion, I've also showed that it's really important to exit on the right moments. So that's not necessary only to like observe that the map is like that's really necessary not only to see when the pump is starting, but to exit on the top of the pump so you don't like lose most of your profits. And this is a strategy for naive method, but I assume that I've exited on the best moment ever. And you see now that the majority of all strategies are better than the hodling. So that's basically means that that's basically mean that you can gain about 150% in the best cases in comparison to minus 70% for benchmark. So that was it. Yep.
What are the
So
strategies? Like you mentioned that you have a bunch of strategies, but what are these strategies actually?
yeah. So for the strategy, I showed it in a channels like a few days ago, maybe a few weeks ago. So for strategy, I mean, really simple thing. Let's exit when the price is going up for some amount of percent. For example, like this cell, we exit after the signal if the price goes more than 91%, or we exit if the price drops more than 31%, 41. So that's basically stop loss arguments. And if we tune this, we gain different profits and losses. So for this cell, like for each cell, that's a strategy based on the signal. And the signals itself looks like this.
So you have a signal which is
Yep.
spike in outflow, and then
Oh, yes.
one strategy is uh, having specific stop loss and having specific profit taking.
Yes.
Okay.
And they're fixed. So I've tried
Okay.
to keep it simple as it is because I don't
Is it
want to like, yep.
is there also a limit on how much time you hold?
I have tested it with limit times, but the difference is not really much, so I just
Okay.
drop it for
And
simplicity.
and if 2 times the signal happens, so you still let's say you bought is it assuming
I
you're
still
buying again?
waiting.
Aha,
No,
okay.
no, I still waiting
Aha,
with the
aha.
asset.
Okay. So it's a kind of a how to call that? It's kind of an event-driven backtest. Do you use
Might
this
be. Yeah.
our backtesting framework for that? It's written from
Yes,
scratch.
yes. That's for our backtesting algorithm.
Okay, nice.
So I do it with this. Yep. Uh, and so that's basically it. So that's all for my talk. It was about like that's more than enough. And the topic with pump and dumps looks like it's popular now because there were few more talks about this. And I would say the talk itself it was pretty easy, but they liked it because like they told me that we have deep domain knowledge, so we know much about how exchanges work, how like tokens we have a lot of time series metrics. So all this is like it was really interesting for them because they don't see it anywhere. So I would say that that's a competitive advantage for Santiment against scholarships. Uh, that was Santiment talk. I want to cover a few more talks that I liked the most. One of them was Junaid talk. This is a guy from U Texas who organized the workshop. So we stay in touch with them quite a few, like maybe since Berlin when we visited in Berlin, and like they they introduced the approach how to model Bitcoin price with chainlets. So what is chainlet? It's you can see chainlets on the left part of the slide. So imagine you have a transaction which have two inputs and two outputs. So this part of the whole network called chainlet. And there are different types of chainlets, like for example, transaction with three inputs and four outputs, or that could be any number of input outputs for transaction. And what they do, they build the matrix with number of outputs and number of inputs. And for each day, they have daily time frame. They put the number of given chainlets in the cell. So in this example, if for example, if today only two transactions have happened, like this and this, we will have the matrix like here. So we have one transaction with two inputs and two outputs, and one transaction with three inputs and four outputs. And they do it for all transactions per day. So the thing is, the matrix itself becomes really huge, like 20,000 by 20,000. But they discovered that 97% of addresses of transactions has less than 20 inputs and outputs. So that's basically okay. And they reduce the size of the matrix by 20 by 20. That makes it easier to use. And on top of these features, like on top of this matrix, they run a random forest model, and they try to predict the price with these features. And it seems that it works pretty well in comparison to benchmark, and they have ARIMA model as a benchmark. The full paper is published, and it's yes, it's here. They have a similar paper for ETH, but they presented Bitcoin graph. So that's basically it. And one interesting thing that I was really like excited about, they also studied Litecoin, and it appeared that Bitcoin and Litecoin are so similar that you can take Litecoin on-chain data and predict Bitcoin price with it. So you take Litecoin data and predict Bitcoin price, and the models of this works pretty good. And that's
Interesting.
what's so that's what they've also been doing, and that's it.
So when they generate these matrices, what do they do with them after that?
They put a single cell as a feature to random forest model.
Okay.
In that case, they have
And
25 features.
the random forest, what it's going to do? Like, what is the point?
If I don't mistake, if I'm like, probably they predict the price with it. With random forest, and they predict the price itself. But they also have some other features like I don't remember, to be honest. Yeah, but the
Okay.
majority of features get generated from this matrix.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's chainlets, and there are different type of chainlets, and they see that. So it's just plotted the occurrence of them, of all them. They also do clustering, but it didn't really help. And the models itself are here. So that's different options of the models. I would say that's pretty interesting. If you're interested, we can implement this in Santiment, but it requires some work, of course. And I would say that's not the priority for now after the conference. Let's move on. The next talk was about forecasting storage price. So they basically, that was funny for me because they took basic econometric models like ARIMA and GARCH, and they built also neural net, and they tried to predict storage price, and the results was like, it was a little bit awkward for me because they got these typical flat lines for ARIMA's predictions, and I can't really understand why it's useful, because like it doesn't really help with these predictions. So that's basically flat lines, and I don't know what is needed for. So I didn't realize what this talk was made for, but that was one of them. Move on. Another thing, there was a talk from Victor. Serena met with Victor maybe a few months ago, and he was giving a talk about pump and dump predictions. So what he done, he took about 18 Telegram channels with Binance Pub announcements, and he manually labeled the pumps. After that, he built a classifier using pricing data only, and the results was pretty good. I don't have his slides, but I remember that we were impressed. So we asked him why didn't he use the messages itself as input features for the model. He said that it was hard for him to collect the whole data. And another thing was after the pump is announced, they delete messages from the channel. So he can't scrape them.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Interesting. So he's tracking pump and dump groups.
Yes.
Okay.
So I was talking for him that we have all like social data, but probably we will not have this Telegram channel, so we can't collect the message historically. I've double checked with one yesterday, and when I was talking with Victor, he said that it would be nice if we collaborate in some way. So I would like to propose to invite him maybe to collaborate with us, so we can do the same analysis, like took the same channels, start to collect the data from now, and based on these messages, maybe try to predict pumps as he does. So I would say that would be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if he gives us the list of channels, we can add them so that we start tracking, and then we see if like depending on what is the size of the data, um, if there are multiple pump and dump calls per day, I guess collecting it for a couple of weeks should be enough to build a model out of that.
Yep, I would agree. But one more problem with this, they usually do pumps announcement in text message, but when they announce the token itself, they do it with the picture. And the picture is different each time, so that would be hard to detect the token automatically. So that's another problem.
Yeah.
one interesting thing that he talked also, all pumps are organized in like rounded time. For example, in 1800 or like 700. So like 99% of the pumps are in 0-minute interval. So that could be as an input feature as well. Like that was also interesting for me. And the Victor itself, he also researched the networks, and he built this site with visualizations of different token networks. For example, like you can check the address. And he was also asking if we have labels for the addresses, because that's the thing he was interested in for several months. And that's maybe we can collaborate with him in this way as well, because he has some labels of exchange addresses, and he is in charge of like get access to our labels. But I didn't promise him to do this because I'm not sure if we can do this. If you want to do this actually, but I think we can work in this direction for him as well.
Mm-hmm. And what is he doing right now? Like, is he doing this research by his own?
Yes, he and one more guy, they do this research by their own, and he's a PhD student. So one of these, I'm not remember which exactly, this token gallery or this pump scheme, that's the part of his PhD. So that's what he's working for.
Okay.
Yep. So for this, that's the most interesting talks from my point of view. That was also interesting talk from Murat, who's also from Texas. He was working on identifying run malware services. So, but the paper is not ready yet, so that's not really much about this. And the other thoughts from the conference, blockchain is a field of research now. So more and more people from academias work on that. And the way, like the thing what I was surprised a little bit, they interested in modeling the price. So we can like collaborate in that way. So they're also interested in price predictions. Another thing, network studies are hype now. Like I've told you that there were a lot of sessions, and that was in 4 days. It was about I guess 30 sessions. So it was about like 10 sections per day, and each day there was at least one section dedicated to networks. So lots of people speak about this, and there are a lot of papers published for finding for the last maybe 2 years. And I would say that's a good use case for a blockchain, because the blockchain itself is a network, and we can try a lot of new methods like do clustering or the networks. There are papers about node roles, so that's came from sociology, when each node has its own role and we want to detect some roles. So maybe that could be implemented for mining addresses or labels. There are also a few papers about finding similar graphs, so you can do transfer knowledge from one network to another. I would say that could be useful if we have a network like Santiment and we know the roles of each address. So if we find a similar network, we probably could assign labels from the Santiment network to this new network. There are also a lot of algorithms that provides node embeddings. And on top of node embeddings, you can do a lot of like you can run any machine learning algorithm for whatever you want. There was also a few papers about graph centrality. So they tried to spot the nodes that impact the network the most. Probably that could be interesting also for us to detect the addresses that make like that the most important in the network. So that's it. The problem with a few of the papers is that they are not really scalable, so we can't apply these papers to our big networks. because they designed for maybe 100 or 1000 nodes. But when we face like millions of nodes, it doesn't really work. And the last one, all these people from the conference think in terms of papers. So that basically means that if you have no paper, you didn't do anything, and you didn't like you have nothing actually. So if you publish papers, they can deal with you. And the Santiment, as probably you know, has no papers. Yeah, so that basically means that we are not in the game currently. And if you want to jump into this academical party, we have to write papers. The question is, do we want to join this party or not? And that's something we should consider about. Now I want you to tell about the paper I was impressed the most. This paper was about nonlinear causality. And a few weeks ago, we had a conversation, big conversation with Maxim about how to evaluate our metrics. So what I've been talking from this, all these messages that at the moment there are two ways to estimate sentiment metrics. That's a statistical method and backtest. And I was saying that statistical methods doesn't work for us because they are too simple. Maxim said that he doesn't like the backtest as well. And also Maxim proposed that we need to develop some unique treatment for that. And then a random guy from ICDM, he had a solution for this, and he presented his paper about the solution. So the paper itself is not published because he's not from academia, but from some research lab. And he spotted a problem that all causality tests that are developed in statistics, they measure linear causality only. So they're not suitable for finding some complicated patterns in time series. So we can't really use them. And he proposed to develop a custom tests with reinforcement learning. And the way it works, so he builds the matrix of relationships between time series, and then he puts these matrices to a neural nets. As he says, he avoids any overfitting with his methods. He also said that it's scalable enough and it's robust to noise. So he was testing his solution with different level of noise, and the models are pretty robust to any level of noise. So the way he was doing this, he generated artificial time series. He put no noise on top of this, and he compared the original time series and the time series with the noise, and the models works pretty well. And one more thing, he claimed that they are not non-linear, so we can estimate some complicated patterns. The thing I also liked about the solution, he doesn't do any assumptions about anything actually. So he has no predefined kernels or zero assumptions about distribution. So that basically means that it works with any time series, or that sounds implementable. And for Santiment, I would say that would be really useful because we need to test our metrics in some unbiased way, and backtests, as I was showing you here, the results of the backtest really depends on the method you do the backtest itself. So that's a little bit unbiased. And the statistical methods, they're too simple, and I would say it's also easy to fake the results, so I don't like this method as well. But for this solution, we can do it in a unique way. So we can choose the best metrics, and we can test new metrics when we ship it, or maybe we can choose metrics to build strategies on top of this. So I would say that's a nut for the sentiment. And as a bonus, this framework could be used for anomaly detection. and for something else, but I don't actually remember. That was 2 more use cases, but I don't remember the second one. So I really like to collaborate with this guy because he already has a paper and he already has the code available, but it's closed. That's at least I didn't found the paper and I didn't found the code. But what I would like to propose is to invite him to the seminar, so he could give a talk the same he gave on the conference. So all you guys will be able to listen to him, and maybe after that we could discuss partnership. So they give us the framework so we can use it. And the open question for now, how far we could go with this, and if we really like the solution, are we like, is there any way for Santiment to pay for this and to use it in production? I don't want the answers now, but that's something worth to think about when you have free time. So current proposal is inviting him to the seminar. What do you think about this?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, what's his name, and do you know where he's working?
Oh yes, I have his business card. I will post it later. So basically, I can write to him and just invite to the seminar. But the next week is awkward because like at least 4 people are in London. So maybe we can do it in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last thing I want to share, there was one more talk about time series motifs. I never heard about this, but the idea is quite simple. You have time series 0, and there are some patterns that uh, repeats over the time, like the same. So each pattern like this is called motif, and motifs are quite popular in biology. In when you try to detect some maybe heartbeats, that was example about heartbeats. So there are a lot of motifs when the heartbeats produce the noise, and also they run experiments on audio scripts. So when you speak, you produce the noise, and with the motifs, you can find features in the voice, so you can train models on top of it later. When the author was talking about the paper, he also he just said very briefly that there is a way to implement for cross-time series analysis. So probably you can identify motifs in one time series and apply this to another. So how can we use this? For example, if we identify the motif, for example, in MVRV ratio, there might be a probability that the price behaves with given motif the same. So if we spot the motif in the metric, we could predict price for the time series itself. As I see, current implementation that they presented, it's not robust to noise, and I would say pricing data is really noisy. So current implementation is not really suitable for us, but probably they have some solution for this. And yeah, the question as well, like, are we interested in this area? So if we do interested in this, we also can invite this girl who was speaking about this, because I would say that's also could be implemented in Santiment for maybe for dashboards, because for MVV dashboard we try to do some similar stuff. So that's a kind of proof that we really need this. Yeah, that's basically all. I also posted a big note about the conference in the community.santiment.net. and it contains all the links with papers I found. And yep, so that's it. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, just let me know.
Yeah, this all sounds really great, especially this test. But it will be nice to experiment with it and see whether it actually does what it claims it does.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you know how this relationship matrix would look like? Did he show anything about that?
I've tried to take photos of the slides, but I was pretty far away, so the resolution is not really good. Yeah, so I don't want to post it. But the way it works, so they built multiple regressors from the time series. Didn't I put this? Yeah, so and they trained the models. They trained actually a lot of models for forward regression task and backward regression task, and they put coefficients to the matrix. And on top of the matrix, they track in the low rank approximation. And on top of this, they run reinforcement model, like reinforcement learning model. And as an output, they have just a matrix that shows you which time series are not correlated, but like influence each other the most, and which are not.
Can we write to this guy to send us the paper so that we can review it? Do you think he'll be willing to do that?
Yeah, I will do this, but as far as he's now from the academia, but from research lab, I'm not sure if it's in the free access mode. So I will write to him. If it's in the free access, I will post it in Discord. If not, I can't do this. But anyway, I want to ask him to give one more talk in the seminar.
Okay. Yeah, it will be cool. Like, I would be surprised why he might not want to send us the paper, but I don't know.
Maybe he wants to earn money on top of it. And,
I don't think academia, like the authors of the papers, are earning any money from access to these papers. So from what I know, it's the websites that are earning, the authors not really.
oh yeah, maybe. Anyway, I will write to him.
We will have several models for metric testing. What about build-based pipeline for any models and use it in future?
The idea behind this idea is that you don't really run the models of predictions, but it's a kind of models for causality tests. So as an output, you don't have any predictions, but you have the knowledge about how time series cause changes in itself. So I would say both approaches are viable. So backtesting is also good, but as I have said, backtesting is a biased way to test the metrics. And if this approach works really good, like as the author claims, I would say that's a better way because it's pretty much unbiased.
I have general question concern the words biased or unbiased. Maybe it's not the right one. It's just a correlation between the data, how I see it exists for some time and then it changes. So this is
Actually,
the reality.
that's not the correlation. So the causality tests and correlation tests are different.
Okay, or causality. Okay, they no, in general, like I'm coming step back. to say that backtesting is biased and this is not biased. I don't think it's right.
Yeah, of course. So that's also one of the possible solutions. But I would say that it's much less biased than the backtest, because backtest is super biased because you define the whole strategy. And here you define only the way you want to test the causality, but that's all. And in his model, he has no assumptions about any distribution of the time series. So it should work with any time series, like even noisy ones, even like this awful time series we have for exchange flows like this. So that's it.
Okay, anyway, we can listen. I have my concerns because whenever people say your approach is biased, mine is not, I always have alarm clock in my head. It's just as a way.
Actually, he didn't say this.
Okay.
He didn't say that was my insults.
Okay.
So
okay.
yeah.
Okay, so maybe it's not the case. Okay. It's not about biased or non-biased. It's just different way of looking into data analysis. Okay.
Yep. And the thing he told that all causality tests measure only linear causality, and that's true. That's like for sure. So, and his model, he has some nonlinear parameters, so he can measure it in this nonlinear way. Yeah, but that works to listen him one more time. So as a takeaway, I propose to invite this guy. I will also write to the guy who made this talk about public dump schemes with Telegram channels. And we also agreed with Chinese that we could do something together. For example, the most easiest one use case for us, he doesn't have prices, like intraday prices, and that's why he can't implement this model for intraday intervals. So that's the first starting point for them. And maybe I will write to this guy who wrote these time series motifs, but I would say they might not work at all because the data is too noisy. That's it. So, any other questions? If nope, I think we can wrap it up.
Yeah. Thank you for the talk.
Yeah.
It will be interesting
Yeah.
to see.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, what this guy can present.
Yep, nice. Okay, thank you for listening. See you next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
Okay.
yeah, I think next
Bye.
week again we're not going to have
Thank
a
you.
seminar because people are in London.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.